Hi, I'm Jason with Cirq Rentals, and today I'm going to show you how to set up the Big Agnes Copper Spur HV UL2 backpacking tent. First thing we're going to do is unpack everything. We got our footprint, we got our stake bag, got our poles, tent body, and our rainfly. Keep track of our stuff sack here, try to keep everything a little bit organized. So in your footprint, you're going to want to look for the shiny side, or the side with the taped seams. That's the side that's going to go up. That's the side that's waterproofed, and you want that facing up toward your tent. So on some footprints, like I said, it'll be kind of shiny or waxy. On others, you'll see a taped seam. And that's the side that you want to look for. Now on the Big Agnes tents, the ribbons are color coordinated, so you have silver ribbons on what I would call the head of the tent, and then orange ribbons on what I would call the foot of the tent. It's a little bit narrower, a little bit harder to get in and out of the doors. So using the footprint, you can go ahead and figure out kind of where and how you want to set your tent up. And you can get kind of a good view of your footprint that you're going to be on. Check for anything underneath the tent like sharp rocks or pine cones, anything that you either don't want to be laying on at night or that might puncture the bottom of your tent or your footprint. And then I generally will, especially if it's windy, I'll stake the footprint out loosely. I'm going to restake it when the tent body comes into play, but I will throw a couple stakes on it just to sort of keep it in place where I want it. Then of course you lay out your tent body. And again, they're color coordinated, so you can just easily match up the silver ribbons on the tent to the silver ribbons on your footprint. Get that nice and laid out. Now onto our poles. You're gonna have two pole sections, one for the tent body and then one spreader bar. And these are great for two reasons. First of all, they're hubbed together and they use shot cord to kind of keep everything connected like most tents. But they're also color coordinated on the ends of the poles. And so that makes it really easy to match up which side goes which. So here I've got silver poles, silver ends to my poles, and they're going to go in the silver ribbons. And then the poles that are orange on the end will go in the orange ribbons. So it makes it really easy to set up. On the Big Agnes tents, you have a really cool technology called tip lock. And so that makes it really easy to get your poles in place and also hold them where they're supposed to go while you're setting up the tent. It's a really nice feature to have. All right, so there we've got the general layout of the tent. Now we're going to move on to our clips. They're also color coordinated here, so you know where all your orange clips go, and then you have clear clips that will go on your spreader bar. Now we'll move on to our spreader bar. And you're going to want to hook one end into those little plastic clear grommets, and you're going to go over the pole design, and that will help lift the tent up. It'll also spread the tent out so that your sidewalls are nice and vertical. It gives you a lot of room inside the tent. And then this last clip on top will go right on that spreader bar. Just kind of really pulls everything together. Again, I'm going to keep track of all my bags here. I'm going to go ahead and put my pole bag inside of the tent bag. I'll throw my footprint bag in there as well. Keep that nice and neat. And at this point, I'm going to want to reposition the tent if I need to at all, and then I'm going to go ahead and stake the four corners of my tent down. So I'm going to remove the ones from the footprint that I put in earlier. I'm going to set the pole into the footprint, and then I'm actually going to use the stakeout point on the tent as opposed to the footprint. So I'll pick one to use as my anchor point, and then I generally do the opposite corner next. Hold it nice and tight. Alright, there we have the tent body completely set up, nice and tight. Get the footprint and the floor pulled out so that you get a lot of room in there. And then finally, if you're in wet conditions or you want to make sure that the fly's on, you can go ahead and install the fly. I'll typically do this later in the day, especially if it's warm out. I like to leave the fly off if I know it's not going to rain, because it will just collect heat in the tent. So it's usually the last thing I put on kind of when I'm making dinner or towards the end of the night. Again, it's color coordinated, so you just match up your ribbons. So we're going to find our two orange ribbons here. We know that goes down here on the orange end. And on the big Agnes tents, you have these clip features. So you actually just clip the rainfly right into the tent ribbon. And there's an adjustment strap on here so you can tighten it down once you clip it in. One thing we'll do at this point is that there is a connection here to put over your spreader pole. That will help hold the fly in place, especially in windy conditions, and just kind of help the tent last a little bit longer. Just loop that over there. And then last, we'll go ahead and stake out our door. You have two ribbons on the door stakeout. You could obviously clip them both if you're going to pull the vestibule out and not use the door, or maybe use the side entrance to the door. If you're going to be using the center point, you want to choose the ribbon on the opposite side of the door, like this. And that way you still have access to your door and the interior door on the tent. You have a couple of extra stakes and guy lines in here for use with the awning. And we'll show you how to set that up separately. Obviously we got one more stake for the back door. If you've got two people in your party, it also helps pull out the rainfly nice and taut. And you can use both sections then for your gear storage. You do have a ventilation pop out here, which can be down if it's cold out and you want to keep that tent nice and warm and insulated. But if you want better ventilation, a little bit cooler tent, get some breeze coming through, and eliminate some of the condensation inside the tent, then you definitely want to pop that open. You have multiple guy out points here, so you can stake it out if you're in higher wind conditions or a little bit more exposed. And that's the basic setup on the Big Agnes Copper Spur HV-UL2. Now to set up the awning on your Copper Spur HV-UL2, you're going to need two trekking poles or potentially like bike handlebars or some sticks, something to hold up the awning. The kit comes with some extra guy out lines which you can use to hold out your stakes and tent poles. And then it comes with two additional stakes for each side, or one additional stake for each side with your door vestibule. And so you're going to use the one that you'd normally use with your door, and then one additional stake for that setup. First thing would be to go ahead and pull down your door and unzip both sides here so that you can expose the awning. And this is the portion that's going to become your awning. You have little loops on the end here. And so once you have your poles positioned, you can either loop that over the top or you can loop it over the handle of your trekking pole. And then I go ahead and tie in little loops on these guy out lines. Just cinch those out, like so. And then these have little tensioners on them, which makes it really easy to set up. All right, so there we've got one side in place. We'll go ahead and do the other side. You may find it necessary to reposition them a little bit once you get both poles up. No big deal. Just reposition your stake. And now with your vestibule area, you still got gear out that you want to keep protected. You could go ahead and stake this out like you normally would and have that vestibule out, or of course you can just roll up the vestibule if you're just hanging out in the tent. And there's your vestibule setup on the copper Spur HV UL2. And to take down the copper Spur HV UL2, we'll just show you how you pack it up. It's the reverse of setting it up. I usually start with the awning and the fly. Try and keep all of my stakes and guy outlines together. It's always important to go ahead and close all of your doors before you set up your tent or take down your tent. That'll help it when you're ready to set it up again, and it'll also prevent hard creases from getting put into the door and the mesh when you push it into your bag. So I always say it's a good idea to zip everything closed before you take down your tent. Make sure you close your vent. All right, the next step will be unclipping the rainfly. And remember, we have these little loops that we are putting over that stabilizer bar. Make sure you pull those. Next step will be to unhook our stabilizer bar. And then we can go ahead and unclip our tent body. Next will be our pole system. I like to start from the center. When taking apart a hub pole system, it puts a little less tension on your shock cord. Hope it'll last a little bit longer. All right, there you go. And now if it's not too windy, you can go ahead and pull your stakes. If it's windy out, I'll usually leave at least one stake in until I have everything packed up and organized. And as far as order of operations, I like to put my poles in first, just because they're a little bit harder to jam into the bag after you've got your tent body in there. So I do poles first, put them in their pole sleeve, cinch that up, gently slide that into your bag. Next, I like to pack the rainfly because I generally am putting that on last when I'm setting the tent up, so I want to be able to pull the body of the tent out first. And we don't recommend folding your rainfly or your tent. It can create kind of long-term grooves and folds where dirt and things can kind of abrade the tent, and so we don't recommend that. We just recommend kind of loosely piling it up, loosely folding it if you need to, no hard folding, and then just gently stuff it in here. The fabrics on these ultralight tents are very fragile, and so you do need to be really careful when you're stuffing, especially. You have those poles in there, you could easily rip the tent or the fly on those poles. So you just want to be really gentle and careful as you're packing up here. Okay, now that I've got it past those tent poles, I can kind of really give it a little bit more of a push. The bag itself is also ultralight, and so it can tear pretty easily too if you're not careful. So just be kind of generally careful as you're packing up your tent. Same thing with the tent body. We're just going to stuff that into the bag. We're not going to fold it. Alright, we've still got plenty of room in here for our stake bag and for our footprint bag. Now the footprint I do tend to fold. It's in the dirt anyway, and these can be easily replaced if need be, and they're just a little bit easier to pack up when they're kind of folded, so I generally do fold my footprint. And I put that in the top because it's the first thing I want to pull out when I'm setting up my tent. Same with the stakes and my tensioners for my awning. Those go in the stake bag with your other guy outlines. Count your stakes and make sure you have all 8 of those. And then I always survey my area, make sure that I haven't left any rubber bands or stakes or anything else that I'm going to need later. And then you've got it all packed up. That's your big Agnes Copper Spur HV UL2.